All right, now to do the Suffolk custody. So everything popped off on the 10th of March. She left on the 11th. I was in Western Tidewater Regional Jail on the 11th from I know the police got here like maybe 9:30. I think I finally made it to the jail about 10:30. So maybe from 10:30 to about 3:30, I was in Western Tidewater Regional Jail. Got bailed out. Like I said, couldn't go home. On the 12th, I went down to the Suffolk court and filed for custody of my two youngest. I knew I couldn't file custody for the oldest one because that was her child she had from a previous marriage. She was going to use these kids as pawns and keep them away from me as much as possible to get at me, just to hurt me, and personally, in my opinion, from financial gain. I applied for custody for them on the 12th. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was the 12th I applied for custody for them. And like I said, I got to go back home on like the 13th or 14th of March. And in between that time, she's texting me and stuff. And like I said before, she was texting me. And one of the times she said, hey, can you bring the kids to North Carolina? And I was like, I cannot bring them to Carolina because of the set of accusations put on me in Suffolk. A condition of my bail was that I could not leave the state. So I told her, I was like, I can't leave the state. I'm not going to do that. And I told her, I said, honestly, I feel like you're going to try to do something shady to take my kids from me. And when I told her I wasn't going to do that, of course, she accused me of trying to keep the kids from her. I said, I am never going to try to keep the kids from you. But I cannot go. You can come up here, see them all you want to, but I can't go down there. Like around the 17th or 19th, one of those days, that's when the sheriffs came to my house. I'm like, well, what now? And they started with paperwork. That's when I got the emergency protective order from North Carolina. The one where she sat there and said that I beat her with a gun, that I'm a threat to the kids. She wants emergency custody of the kids, my truck in the house, even though she filed this in North Carolina. So I was like, oh, so that's probably why she was trying to get me to take them down there, because even though I received it on like the 19th, it shows she filed it on the 16th, and on the 15th is when she kept asking me to bring them down there. So when she came back up, she got into that whole situation with her ex-husband on the 20th, and we eventually had to go back to court for our custody hearing. When she was trying to say, well, I'm going to transfer down to North Carolina, they're like, well, he filed first. So since he filed first, that's where it's going to go. And of course, all the drama that happened between the text messages, certain things being said to one another, first drop off and pickup, it was at my mom's. She came to pick up the boys. And when she came and got the boys, I asked about my dog. And I asked where my dog was. And she said, I don't know where your dog's at. It ran away. Because the boys said they woke up one morning and my dog was gone. He was a puppy. He was 4 months old. So I was like, where's my dog at? Because the courts would not allow me to come back to my house to get my things. So, my dog would have been one of the things I would have got. And she was like, I don't know where he's at. And I was like, all right, you'll be hearing from my lawyer, because there's no way a 4-month-old puppy just up and ran away. So when I got back to her ex-husband's house, where I was staying at during that time, the police called me and said that they had to talk to me about the complaint that was filed with them. I'm like, well, what's going on? Like, well, they said that you yelled at her and you threatened her, and there were no witnesses. And I said, officer, we were in the middle of the street. My mother and her neighbor were outside when this happened. He's like, well, she said there's no witnesses, so we're going to go by that. I said, I can call my mother and she can walk across the street to get her neighbor who was outside at her mailbox when all this happened. There was no yelling. Nothing happened. I asked where my dog was. She said it ran away. I told her she would hear from my lawyer. I said, you can ask the kids. He's like, well, we got to go by her word because of what she's, already having filed, but we're just going to give you a warning. I'm like, officer, I didn't yell at her. I didn't yell at her. He's like, look, we're just giving you a warning. Just from here on out, you might want to record all your interactions. And from that day forward, I started recording all our interactions. We get to a court date, and they established that we would currently temporarily have 50-50 custody. Of course, she wasn't okay with that. And then when we had to fill out our paperwork, and one of the paperwork asked like if we were aware of like the other spouse has any type of issues or anything, and I had told them like, yes, in my opinion, she has a substance abuse problem with alcohol and weed. Now, I don't have a problem with a drinker. I don't have a problem with a smoker. I do have a problem with somebody who puts drinking and smoking above their responsibilities. There's been times where bills weren't paid because she had to hit up her weed man in a liquor store, and I'm like, yo, did such and such get paid? And she's like, nah, you got it. I was like, that's not how we agreed to operate. I pay all the big bills, you pay the little bills. But you done blew all your money on liquor and weed. And I said, in my opinion, that's the problem if you putting your vices above your responsibility. And her and I had conversations about that. So I told him, like, yes, she indulges in it too much to the point where she's not being responsible. And then she goes, no, he's the one that smokes too much. And I told them, I said, the courts, I told them, like, yo, I have a job where I'm in a drug-free program where they can test me at any given moment. So I cannot smoke weed. I can't do that. I can't do anything. Most I can do is drink. That's it. And they said, well, fine, since she's saying that you're abusing marijuana and you're saying the same thing, both of y'all take a drug test. Cool, I have no problem with that. So next court date, after our drug test, when they get results, they were going to move forward from there. So I get a call from my lawyer. My lawyer says, hey, they got the results from our drug test. I'm like, oh, well, they said they got the results from mine. I said, all right, cool. Like, yeah, yours is clean. I said, duh. And they said, well, you want to hear about her results? I said, yeah. And they're like, okay, she didn't take it. I'm like, what do you mean she didn't take it? She didn't take it. She said that she can provide a urinalysis, but she's not going to cut her hair because they wanted a hair follicle test. So they said she's not going to cut her hair. And then she said she couldn't afford to take the test. And then after they pressed her again about it, that's when she just went ahead and said, well, I just smoke a little weed here and now and then. Like, ma'am, you said in your statement before when he accused you of this, you said you didn't smoke weed at all. Now you're saying you do. So at that point, I asked my lawyer, so like, what can we do with this information? Like, this should really help me out with custody. He said, it will, but this is how we're going to play it. Seeing that we currently have that Norfolk protective order that's pending, we're going to get her to agree to get that thrown out because they're not being fair to you in there. So we're going to get her to get that thrown out, and you guys have 50-50 custody. Need be it, after that's established, you and I can go back and ask for an modification or something of it where you can get full custody. But let's get the 50-50 established and that one thrown out of order, that protective order taken out, so that way that can't be used against you to move forward. So that's what we did. My lawyer called her lawyer, so we agreed to 50-50 custody, and it's actually in our custody order that not only do we have 50-50 custody, that she has to drop the Norfolk order. So all that's in there, Norfolk order got dropped. We ended up getting 50-50 custody in 2020. It did have a stipulation in there showing that if her and I can agree to make some changes, then that could be the order. Of course, me personally, I already said if that were to happen, I'll make sure it's through text message so that it's written. It's somewhere captured where it shows her responding, me responding, and we can show the court. So that was our custody order for them at the end of that whole battle. How it ended up at the end, well, pretty much she was coming to see him every other weekend at the end.